Do you know this picture? How about this one? They are images seen on posters and T-shirts around the world. Bob Gruen took these pictures. He even gave the T-shirt to the subject, his friend, John Lennon.
I said, you know, if you still have that T-shirt, you know, we're up here on the roof with the skyline all around us, it would be a great time to wear it. And he knew right where it was and went and put it on, and we took this picture.
For more than 40 years, Bob Gruen has been photographing musicians. In his West Village apartment, there are thousands of files of photos with the famous and not so famous.
Ryan Adams to Penny Arcade, Elvis Costello to the Psycho Sluts from Hell.
Mom and Dad, big Psycho Sluts fans?
My mom and dad don't know about the Psycho Sluts.
Gruen's work is on display at an exhibit called Rockers at the Morrison Hotel Gallery in the East Village. There are the typical concert shots, but many of the candid shots are born out of Gruen's anti-paparazzi belief that photography should not be used to expose people.
I don't like to embarrass people. My favorite compliment is when somebody gets one of my photos and they call back and ask if they can get a copy to give to their mother. And I've gotten that compliment from people as different as Bo Diddley and Lou Reed. And when they ask for a copy to give to their mother, I know I've done my job right, because I know that that picture looks like what they want to look like.
After 40 years, Gruen is still photographing contemporary bands, but much of the day-to-day of his work has changed. 20 to 30 years ago, he would shoot a concert at the Garden, then head to CBGB's for a midnight show.
So I was there till like 3 or 4 in the morning, drinking, taking pictures, having fun. Then I come home and have to develop the film. And around 5 in the morning, I was printing the pictures. And by noon the next day, I'd be out on my bicycle, going around town, dropping them off at the record companies and the magazines.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty 24/7 job.
Now with digital technology, it's a whole new game.
It's not a question of whether I like digital or not. It's a fact that that is what's happening.
Right.
It is what people expect. You can't send a print or a slide to a magazine anymore.
Right.
They wouldn't know what to do with it.
He knew early on that he wanted to work 9 to 5, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
I didn't visit this lifestyle as a journalist. I live this lifestyle. You know, I'm part of this lifestyle. I'm not looking at these people. I am part of these people. My dad was bragging to somebody and said that his son was in Japan taking pictures of Kiss. And the other person was horrified and said, Kiss represents sex, drugs, and rock and roll and everything that's wrong, you know. And my dad asked me later, you know, is that true? And I had to kind of think about it, and I thought, well, you know, I don't really, I like sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
But at 61 and a grandfather, his lifestyle has changed.
I don't really know anybody from the old days who is still doing as much of the wildlife, as much of the drinking and drugging as we used to do. It comes to a point where you really can't do it every night for 40 years. You can do it every night for 4 years, maybe even 14 years. But I don't know, after 40 years, you're really pushing your luck.
His years on the road created some friendships that extended far beyond photographer and subject, like the late Joe Strummer of The Clash.
It's actually a horizontal picture, and the rest of the band is over here, but I cropped it just for Joe. After he died, I was going to bring some pictures to his funeral, and I picked this one out, and his wife ended up putting it on the coffin.
And then there is the friendship for which he is best known. On the night John Lennon was murdered, Gruen was supposed to meet him at the recording studio to show him some pictures.
You live with it every day. When you're close to somebody and you lose them, you feel it all the time. It's like a very deep wound, and eventually you'll form a scar. But whenever that scar gets touched, you feel it all the way inside.
Bob Gruen has a rock-solid alibi for his wife whenever girls come over to talk to him.
Don't worry, they're just warming me up, and their boyfriends are going to come over and ask me about Led Zeppelin until 3 in the morning. And it happens over and over again.
Gruen first started taking pictures of shows at summer camp.
Campers put on a play, a musical play, and I was down front with my Brownie Hawkeye, and I took some pictures, and I mailed the pictures home to my mom, and she developed them and sent me the prints, and I actually sold them to the campers. And I like to think that's pretty much what I did for the rest of my life, except my mom wasn't making the prints anymore.
Photography was actually his mother's hobby, and in their Long Island home, Gruen's folks thought that's what it should be, a hobby.
It was a long time before they really kind of accepted that as something to do for a living. Mm-hmm. You know, you're supposed to get a job and then enjoy photography at night or on the weekends. You know,
you enjoyed it,
and I enjoyed it at night. Exactly.
After high school, he came to New York, lived with a rock and roll band, and started a life as a freelance photographer.
There was a lot of times when you wondered, if you were ever going to make money, and there were times when I was 3 months behind in the rent and the phone was about to be cut off.
But there was one member of his family who suspected that Gruen would prevail.
My grandfather said I could make money on an iceberg. I'm kind of a hustler, and I know that if I wake up Saturday morning and I have a date Saturday night and I need some money, I'll find it.
Gruen's first photo pass was to an event that would become part of rock and roll lore. Bob Dylan at the 1965 Newport Folk Festival, Going Electric.
People were cheering, they were booing, they were fighting with each other right in the seats. A lot of the purists thought that this was a folk music place and you couldn't play rock and roll.
How was the concert? Don't ask.
A lot of times when I'm taking photos, I don't remember exactly what the song they were playing. Like I'll shoot the Rolling Stones or something for 3 songs, and I'll sing along while I'm taking pictures, and then I get off stage and somebody says, well, what songs did they do? And I'll go, I don't even know. I'm thinking f-stops, focusing, timing, lighting.
When Gruen first started out, there was no guarantee that the interest in the bands he shot would last this long.
When you see a band like Kiss or Alice Cooper, nowadays those are iconic names. When they started out, they were kind of sideshow weirdos.
As his career grew, Gruen hit the road with bands like the Sex Pistols, The Clash, who occasionally had him open the show with his bugle.
Before they would come out, I would go out and play a call to arms and a charge.
And another of his favorites, the New York Dolls.
I saw the Dolls and it just blew me away. They were the most chaotic, most exciting, craziest, wildest.
He loved the lifestyle, but it took a toll.
I gave up a lot of security. I gave up the time to be able to live with my family. In the middle of the 70s, I broke up with my first wife and my son. Managed to see my son quite often, but didn't live with him. And I think that's the biggest thing I gave up.
His days of being behind in the rent are long gone. Pictures that Gruen took 20, 30, 40 years ago are still seen in books and exhibits around the world. Gruen has an appreciation for the past.
Nowadays they can say a band is kind of like Motley Crue but with an Alice Cooper singer. Well, when I saw him, Alice Cooper wasn't compared to anybody. Tina Turner is not like anybody. And so I kind of saw a lot of originals.
And yet, with a wife, granddaughter, and new bands to shoot, Gruen says he is not living in the past.
Somebody once asked John Lennon when he was going to reform the Beatles, and he answered, when are you going to go back to high school? There are things you do and you enjoy, and you even miss a little bit, but you wouldn't go back and do it again. There's so many more things to do. Why would I want to go back? I've already done that.
One-on-One with Bob Gruen, Bud Mishkin, New York 1.